Now, baggage handlers for several major international airlines have voted to walk off the job next Monday over a pay and conditions dispute that's threatening to cause further travel chaos over school holidays. McIntosh is the Transport Workers Union National Assistant Secretary, and he joins us live from Sydney. Thank you so much for being on the show this morning.
Good morning, Steph. Great to be with you.
Could you just explain what the reasons behind this strike are?
Yeah, look, we're talking about 350 baggage handlers here from Sydney, Brisbane and Adelaide, as you say, that predominantly service the international carriers coming in and out of the country. Really what's happened here is that these workers, they didn't get JobKeeper during the pandemic. They've been bargaining for over 7 months. They still only get guaranteed 4 hours of work a day, and they're on very close to the minimum possible rates of pay. And I think most people would say you can't possibly get a home loan. It's pretty hard to feed your family with inflation above 6% if you're only guaranteed 4 hours a day at close to minimum rates. And of course, the thing that irks them most, Steph, is that this work a little over or around about 2 years ago was performed by full-time, reasonably paid Qantas workers until the airline took the illegal decision, as it turns out, in the middle of the pandemic to outsource all of that work to companies such as Donata. So these workers are saying, how come in 2 years we've gone from this work being valued at full-time, reasonably paid conditions down to you're only allowed to get 4 hours a day guaranteed and you're on these minimum rates? These guys are saying that's not fair, and we need a fair go here.
So just how overwhelming was that decision to go into strike action, and how many workers are concerned that they're going to have to leave the industry altogether because of these conditions?
Look, of the 350 workers, I think close to 90% participated in what is a voluntary vote, and 96% of those workers voted in favour of taking industrial action. And that's clearly an overwhelming outcome, particularly when you consider, Steph, these workers didn't get paid during the pandemic. They've had wage freezes essentially for the last couple of years, and they're on these minimum conditions. To take industrial action in those circumstances means that something is really wrong. And the problem we can see in this industry is that people, it's not only that they want to leave, we can't get workers to come back in. And that is because, unfortunately, the biggest gorilla in the room, being Qantas, has taken a decision to outsource this work, to give work out to different companies, knowing that they'll be on these minimum wages and conditions. And people simply don't want to work in what is physical, backbreaking work if you're only going to get 4 hours a day at these minimum rates of pay. And this is what's happened to this industry that's now in crisis.
So just how many flights are likely to be impacted by this decision? And there's more potential strike action ahead from another third-party working group as well, isn't there?
There is, Steph, and so this comes back to the Donata workers service around 20 international carriers, companies like Singapore, Emirates, many airlines that come in and out, and of course that Qantas international work in Sydney and Brisbane. So any number of flights could be affected, delayed or cancelled next Monday. Similarly, as you say, Menzies, another of these companies that Qantas outsourced the work to, these workers in New South Wales and Victoria have also had enough. It's a very similar story. They can't understand how this work, which was once upon a time coveted Qantas work that people wanted to go and do, full-time, reasonably paid work, down to Qantas outsourcing it to these minimum standards. They can't understand why that's the case, and they can't get home loans. They can't keep up with the cost of living under those sort of conditions. Now, this is a structural problem in this industry that needs to be addressed. If you've got the biggest gorilla in Qantas behaving in this way, you're not going to fix it without the government coming in and really doing something here.
Well, this is all coming up at the really busy school holiday period as well. And are you concerned that you're going to lose the support of the travelling public by doing this this whole strike action? And do you think that they could be looking at this and saying, well, surely you could have come up with a better way of fulfilling your demands without interrupting flights?
Look, Steph, it is always a last resort to take this form of industrial action. We're very conscious, and our members are very conscious, that anything they do affects the travelling public. But we have to remember that this is a group of workers denied JobKeeper for 2 years, haven't had a pay rise in a couple of years, have been bargaining for over 7 months, have agreed to have 2 days of bargaining this week to try and resolve this. But they are stuck on 4 hour guaranteed hours a day in the minimum rates of pay. I think their message to the travelling public is, look, we don't want to do this, but what other choice have we got? We're going to have to leave this industry, and it's going to be in an even bigger crisis than it already is unless we can fix this. And of course, the travelling public, Steph, need to remember that this is all as a result of Qantas illegally, I should say, outsourcing this work about a year or so ago and giving this work out knowingly, moving it from full-time down to these part-time minimum rates of pay. They knew what they were doing. They were cutting labour costs, and they've left these workers high and dry. So any anger the public understandably has if we're forced to take action next week should be at the feet of this Qantas management team who have deliberately orchestrated this result.
So this strike is next Monday, but if the employers refuse to budge, could we be looking at more strikes and more interrupted flights in the future?
Look, again, that's not what we want here. We really hope it gets resolved this week. But if we don't get an outcome, if we're forced to take action next Monday, then our members, of course, are entitled to continue to take action until such time as this is fixed. And we plea really with Donata, who are owned by the Emirati government, to really end this particular dispute. But the bigger issue, Steph, is if we want to stop industrial strife at our airports, we need the federal government to see this as a structural crisis, to come in, put an independent body in place that can go through this root and branch and come up with some enforceable solutions. Because if you have a situation where Qantas, with over 60% of the domestic market share, is trying to drive down wages and conditions to the minimum, then workers frankly don't have a hope, and we need the government to come in to give these guys a fair go and to bring people back into this great industry.
Thank you so much for your time, Nick McIntosh from the Transport Workers Union.
Thanks, Steph.